It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. Welcome to the Larry Kudlow Show. Great pleasure to be with you, as always. By the way, for this radio show, you can live stream us on the Internet. Live stream us on the Internet. LarryKudlowShow.com. LarryKudlowShow.com. You can hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system. That includes the Milky Way. Or you just take a drone, go around the country if you want a drone. We'll talk about drones later. It's the greatest story never told. Oh, my God. Incidentally, during the week, I invite you all, Fabulous Fox Business Network. Fabulous Fox Business. Name of the show's Kudlow Plays, 4 to 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. And if by some chance you can't make it at 4, why then just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing. I want to start out talking about Donald Trump capturing a new American zeitgeist, a new spirit of the country, new energy. Really quite something. You see all these measures of confidence taken after the election. A whole bunch of small businesses. National Federation of Independent Businesses, NFIB, small business, which make up about, 80% plus of all output jobs in the country, most important resource. So the small business survey increased by the largest amount in November after the election in the history of the survey. In the history of the survey, I think the survey is about 40 years old. And then you had consumer confidence soaring. And then you had the Federal Reserve, New York Fed, financial confidence soaring. Every one of them. Fantastic. And until recently, the stock market's been soaring. I'm going to come back to the stock market a little bit later. But we had a great run, at least for the first 3-4 weeks. And I really think the country is breathing a collective sigh of relief. Whoa. We got out from under all these big government socialists, all these woke people, all these DEI people, all these people that hate God and religion. We dodged the bullet. But more than that, I think, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Mr. Trump himself, who ran a brilliant campaign. And, yeah, he's kind of taken over right now. He's like the de facto president. Joe Biden is almost out of sight. His trip to Paris for the reopening of the beautiful Notre Dame Cathedral was a very smart political move, very smart cultural move. He was at the New York Stock Exchange this week. He won Time Magazine's Man of the Year, and they made a big deal about it at the Stock Exchange. The brokers are chanting, the floor brokers are chanting, USA, USA, USA. Fantastic stuff. And he said, yeah, I'm going to get you a 15% corporate tax rate. You produce domestically, produce here in the United States. It's pretty low right now, 21. He'll take it down to 15. He's going to cut taxes across the board. Of course, you have the Doge brothers, as I call them, not the Blues brothers, the Doge brothers, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, who are really going to dismantle the unelected bureaucracy called the regulatory state, which was the backbone of Joe Biden's socialism. Unelected bureaucrats, unelected regulators, going way beyond anything they were mandated to do by Congress or the taxpayers. Get rid of them. businesses, consumers getting ready to roar. I mean roar if we keep it up. The national mood is turning very positive. It's as though Mr. Trump's win is reviving America's lost energy. And also, I want to note, this is an interesting sidelight to this story. You know, I talk about the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist is a great rejuvenation of our spirit and our energy. America's back to being America again. It's an economic zeitgeist, but it's also a cultural zeitgeist. Very important. It's interesting. If you read Mr. Trump's interview with Time magazine, as they gave him their Man of the Year award, they asked him what were the turning points in the campaign, and he said, well, the assassination attempt in Butlerfield, Pennsylvania. He said that changed a lot of people. He said a lot of people became much more religious, including, he noted, members of his own family. And he reiterated this thought that really goes back to the RNC in Milwaukee, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, when he said that he, Mr. Trump, came to believe that God spared his life for a reason. God spared his life for a reason. And I want to add to that, the left, the progressives, I mean the real lefties, they hate God. They hate religion. They don't want anybody to talk about it. That's over. And Mr. Trump is being very explicit about that. He is bringing God back into our culture, bringing religion back to our culture. You know, a couple decades ago, I was a staffer, senior staffer at the National Review magazine. William F. Buckley Jr., who was a very dear friend, and became he and Pat Buckley, my wife, saintly wife, and I. And Bill wrote books about this and columns, how you cannot have a healthy country or culture without God or religion. In families, workplace, in personal relations, in communities. You know, people have to be unafraid to talk about going to temple or church or whatever your religious viewpoint may be. And, of course, I've had Cardinal Dolan on the TV show any number of times talking about the importance of religious freedom. But if you go back, Donald Trump went to the Al Smith Catholic Charities dinner, remember, in mid-late October. Kamala Harris was a no-show, and then she had this degrading, disgusting message video that she sent that was really mocking Catholics. Trump won Catholic votes by 20 points. Back in 2020, Joe Biden won the Catholic vote by half a dozen points. Shows you the turnaround. But it isn't just Catholic. It's religion in general. Religion in general. So you could connect the dots. The Al Smith dinner, going to the Notre Dame Cathedral, talking to Time magazine about a lot of people become more religious. It's part of the zeitgeist. It's part of the improvement in the culture. It's part of the end of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, all that nonsense, which is just, all that is affirmative action to the 100th power. We'll go back to a merit-based country, the way we were brought up. And that will allow people freedom, religious freedom, economic freedom. These are all part of the zeitgeist, as I call it. It's a word that my dear late friend Jack Kemp used to talk about a lot in the Reagan era. And the Trump era, I think, may be a lot like the Reagan era, a renaissance for America. Its values, its culture, its economy. That's the new spirit. It's return to law and order, closing the border, stopping crime, all these things. Reviving America's greatness. You'll see in the economy. Wait till you see if Mr. Trump makes good on his dismantling of the regulatory state with the Doge brothers, if he cuts the taxes as we expect him to. Schumpeterian gales of creative destruction. Joseph Schumpeter, a great free market economist. Gales of creative destruction. The new replace the old. That's all a technological advance. We'll see more and more of that. Less and less regulation. Suppressing. We want economic freedom. That's what Mr. Trump is bringing. You see it everywhere. People that don't like him are starting to like him. Or, let me put it differently, people that may not like him are giving him a good chance. How's that? He doesn't want people to love him. He's just saying, give me a chance. I'm going to turn this country around. I'm going to turn this economy around. I'm going to turn this inflation around. I'm going to turn our foreign policy, peace through strength, around. I'm going to show you a great America, a strong America, like Reagan's city on the hill. And sure, the left-wing media mocked Reagan. They will mock Trump, but who cares about the left-wing media anyway? Who cares? Nobody listens to them. Nobody listens to them. Nobody watches them on TV. I mean, really, who cares? So I'm just saying, it's like Mr. Trump, he's the de facto president right now. And I don't even feel like demeaning Joe Biden. Okay, Joe Biden's yesterday's story, a sad tale. Not our best moment in American history, but it's passing now. The voters decided. The voters decided. And it's a wonderful thing. Trump captures a new American zeitgeist, a new spirit and energy and culture for everyone, whites, blacks, browns, Asians, young, old, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, it doesn't matter. These are universal values. This is a universal spirit. This is a new American zeitgeist, and you know what? Trump himself is part of this zeitgeist. And you see it every day. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
So, some more on the zeitgeist, the new spirit and energy captured by Donald Trump and created by Donald Trump. But I want to put up a risk. We will talk about this later in the show with Steve Forbes and also with our stock market people. But there's one thing that does trouble me. You've got a couple of senators, Republican senators, and even some people inside the Trump transition team, who are talking about delaying the tax cuts. That would be the corporate tax cut. By the way, the business tax cut, business deduction, the 20% deduction, that's in that package. 100% expensing depreciation of equipment. Individuals, everybody's going to get 3 percentage points reduction if we renew the tax cuts. Then, of course, you have the tax-free cash tips, tax-free overtime, and down the road, perhaps a big break for seniors and the double tax on Medicare. This stuff should not be delayed. Mr. Trump has promised it time and time again. You want to fatten people's wallets, the working folks, the middle class, the blue-collar boom that I've talked about from time to time, the blue-collar boom that Mr. Trump wants. They're the ones who put him in office. Now, there shouldn't be any dispute about this, but there is. They're talking about breaking off the first reconciliation bill. That's just a big fiscal package. Both houses have to pass it, but you only need a majority. Like the Senate, you don't need 60 votes, you just need 51 votes. The Republicans will have it 53-47. But my point is, I don't know why John Thune, Senator Thune, and some others are talking about 2 reconciliation bills or 3, and that would just delay the tax cuts. And that would essentially break a promise. Let's not do that. Put the border money, defense money, fighting crime, spending cuts, and tax cuts to grow the economy. We must have substantial 3% plus growth. Open up the fossil fuel spigots even wider. Can put it all into one bill. Can walk and chew gum at the same time, as people sometimes say. You see the stock market, which had been roaring, up almost 3,000 points in the first month after Mr. Trump's huge landslide win, November 5th. But in the last 10 days, really the last 7 trading days, including this past week, the Dow has lost ground, quite a lot of ground, 1,200 points. And I think one reason for that is investors are disappointed about delaying the tax cuts. I think this is an absolute key point. And I think the confidence measures that I talked about earlier, the small business, NFIB, and the consumers and the consumer finance, all of them, they went, highest jumps in recorded history right after the election. They'll retrace. They'll go back down over disappointment about taxes. And the market will retrace. You'll have a very bad correction. I don't want a Trump correction. I don't want Mr. Trump to lose his stock market zeitgeist just because a few people mistakenly want to delay the tax cuts. So that's one little iffy point that I want to throw in here, and we will talk more about this as the show goes on. We'll take a break. Joe Concha and Mark Simone on the other side.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
So let's talk a little politics. We got 2 of the best, Joe Concha, Fox News contributor. And Joe's got a new book out, pre-order. You can pre-order The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign, Unburdened by What Has Been. What a title. And Hall of Famer Mark Simone, radio host, 710 WOR, weekdays from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So, fellas, I managed to get through the first half hour with, I think I mentioned the word drone once. That was all, just once. But now we have to go and do the drone story. Okay, the drones. And I'm going to lead off the drone story. Here's what Trump says on Truth Social. He says, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government knowledge? I don't think so. Let the public know, and now. Otherwise, shoot him down. DJT, Donald J. Trump. Joe Concha, what do you think? What is going on here with this drone story?
Well, Larry, as you know, I'm a Jersey guy, and I was out last night. And go to my Twitter feed at Joe Concha TV, and you will see what I filmed. There are objects flying basically over my house that flash red and white and move in directions that I've never seen from any aircraft on this planet. And it's every night. This has been going on for weeks. And it's good to hear from the acting president, Donald J. Trump, because Joe Biden has yet to say one public thing about this. Kamala Harris is still the vice president last check. You'll find her poolside at Mar-a-Lago before, we hear from her again, apparently.
Yes.
So, and my governor, Phil Murphy, says There's no need to panic, nothing to worry about. And then when he's asked, well, what are they? Oh, we don't know. Oh, great. That's reassuring. So, yeah, shoot them down. So this way we can actually see what's inside these things, what parts they're made of, where they're possibly from. This is the Chinese balloon all over again that flew across the country from Montana all the way to South Carolina like Clark Griswold, going on vacation, like unfettered, just kept going, and then we shot it down when it was over the ocean. Here's the thing about these drones. Apparently they're coming from the Atlantic Ocean off the Jersey shore. Shoot them down before they come onto our shores. That should be our policy. If we don't know what you are, we will shoot you down. End of story.
Wow. Mark Simone, I had Brett Vilikovich on last night, who's an expert, ex-Army guy, probably knows more about than anybody else. He says we're vulnerable to drone attack. It's going to get worse. Drones don't just pose a physical threat. They can be used to gather extensive amounts of secure information. That goes to Joe Concha's point. It's the Chinese spy balloons 2.0. And it is quite remarkable that the government and the Defense Department has nothing to say about this.
Well, we said this on the TV show a couple weeks ago, that in the final month, Biden would do the worst stuff he's ever done, the worst cover-ups, the worst lies, worst deployments. This is, they covered up his mental state. They covered up things in the pandemic. This cover-up is the most dangerous one of all. There's too many of these. It's obviously not an amateur hobbyist, anything like that. It's not some commercial corporate company. This is clearly, most likely, foreign military stuff. So it's either they're doing gathering data, or they're just doing this to see what our response would be, get a look at our military response or how we respond to this, which is the only explanation for why we're not doing anything. We just don't want to show them what our response is. But it's insane. They've got to do something, and you don't want to just shoot them down one by one. You got to go find the mothership and take out the source.
How can we not know that? How can we not know the source? That's an important point. How can we not know that?
There's a rumor of that Iranian huge drone ship off the Atlantic. But to leave America in the dark and scared about this is the worst thing Biden's done so far.
I'll read you some more of Brett Vilikovich. Again, this guy knows more about, and he's been in drone combat around the world. He says, we've lost the ability to protect our own airspace. We have a complacent and incompetent Biden administration in charge that has set our drone industry back years. President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration can't come soon enough. We need an overhaul of our drone defenses nationwide. Our national security infrastructure is not set up to defend against what's coming or even what's already here. I mean, wow. That is, Mark, that's worse than worse.
It's horrible. It's just, it's insane. And the same thing with that balloon that came over America, 8 days of doing nothing about it. And as, people say, this kind of weakness is provocative. Whatever this is, our failure to respond is going to cause other countries to do this kind of stuff. It's horrifying.
Joe Concha, you think this is China, China spy balloon 2.0?
It's Iran, it's China, but it absolutely is. And I think Mark makes the right point that they're testing to see what they can get away with at this point. And apparently it's everything. And I interviewed an expert on AI yesterday, and if you want to hear scary, AI now can be militarized to the point where you could program a drone to find somebody through facial recognition and then go to where that person's location is and follow them until the drone then blows up and obviously kills the person. And it's what is happening right now in Ukraine, where there are drones following Russian troops. And then once they recognize, say, a general, for example, they can blow up the drone, and therefore the general is, gone. So think about Donald Trump on a golf course for a moment. How do you protect him when he's playing golf if you could send a drone to kill him? Secret Service is there, but if something's flying in over them, what are they going to do to protect the president? So I think this is something that we're way behind on right now, and we have people that are very vulnerable, I have a feeling. And the fact that we're not sending a message right now to shoot these things down, and to Mark's point, like just take out the mothership where they're being launched from, it's a horrible precedent. And again, this president cannot leave soon enough. What are we, 33 days away? We got to live with this? Move the inauguration up to tomorrow. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, including Biden.
Including Biden. Mark Simone, you got drones in Connecticut, I'm told. Susan Varga told me there are drones in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Well, there's not much to look at in Connecticut. In New Jersey, you got an Air Force base. You got the home of the next president. You got a lot of stuff there. You got major airports. They're everywhere. They're in Las Vegas. They're all over America now. How much does this threat have to grow before the president will at least admit what it is or say something?
What about airplanes flying and drones flying around them? I mean, who is it? Joe said they're moving in, rapid directional changes never seen before. I mean, at what point are we going to have an airline crash?
Yeah, and if we do,
go ahead,
from one or two drones, then we know there's another 1,000 of them up in the sky. What are we going to do about it? It'll be too late to do anything about it then.
Has Hegseth said anything about this? New incoming defense secretary. He's gonna get. He'll be confirmed. I mean, I don't know this guy John Kirby. The spokesperson for national security. I mean, he just gets up there and says, we don't know anything. Homeland Security says we don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. How can that be? This is America. We're supposed to be the strongest country in the world, the most advanced technological country in the world, the strongest military in the world, Mark. How can we not know?
Yeah, well, Kirby looks like, when there's a big fight at the airport at the gate, you can't get an answer, and they say, well, we'll bring out the manager. And the guy comes out, and you can see it's the most useless manager who's going to double-talk you. That's Kirby.
Yeah. What? This thing can't keep going on the way it's going on, fellas. I'm just telling you, I don't know. This has been going on for weeks. It's just kind of the biggest story out there right now. And Trump says shoot it down. When it was original China balloons, remember they drifted in from Alaska over Montana. A lot of Montana, they got the cattlemen in Montana, the Yellowstone cowboys wanted to shoot it down. But they wouldn't allow them. They said it's not a problem. Remember, it's not a problem. It's not gathering intelligence, no problem. And then they finally shot it down off the coast of South Carolina. But this thing, there's too many drones to just shoot one down.
Yeah, they're everywhere over the night sky. And look, I don't understand why New Jersey was the first place they came. To Mark's point, there's not much to see in Connecticut. I get it. Trump lives here, but not now, right? He's down in Mar-a-Lago until it gets warm here, until like May or June. And obviously we have an Air Force base, but they've mainly been in the northern part of the state where I live. So I don't know if that's necessarily the target here. But I'll say this, and if the people that are running these drones are listening, or if you're aliens, well, aliens aren't going to come light years to take New Jersey. That I know. So that's out. But if you're here to take Springsteen and Bon Jovi, you can have them gladly. We don't want them anymore. So if it's for Springsteen and Bon Jovi, Larry, take them.
Well, that was, Mark, one of my original theories, which is as good as any other theory, is that, these were Christmas angels coming to redeem New Jersey from Governor Phil Murphy's socialism. That was one of my original thoughts. But now it looks a little more serious because angels aren't that big.
It looks very serious. These aren't angels. These are definitely not angels. It's very serious. It's very militaristic. They're flying in formations. And what's in northern New Jersey? Well, it could be the fact that it's 10 minutes from New York. I hate to say it. New York
What
City.
was the Orson Welles movie?
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. That's what this is like. Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. And we're not except this is real.
In the movie with Tom Cruise, eventually these things come out of the ground and are these huge robots that, kill everybody. So, I don't know. Maybe I should move. How is Florida these days? I mean, that's a good state, right? No income tax. That might be the way to go. No drones over Florida.
I don't know. Taking out New Jersey might not be that bad. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, so I understand. But New Jersey is not the New Jersey that I grew up in many decades ago. But I mean, this is just you're gonna have drone crashes. Didn't a drone crash in somebody's backyard? But it was a small drone. It wasn't a monster drone. Anyway, I got to get out. Enough of drones. It's unbelievable. We have other things to talk about. We got to talk about daylight savings time. I got to talk about the Biden people, the lowest of the low. Most pathetic story out there is to sabotage Donald Trump's border wall. They're selling steel at bottom dollar prices, equipment. It's really a pathetic thing. Anyway, folks, we'll take a quick break. Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, Mark Simone, Hall of Famer, radio host, 710 WOR. weekdays 10 a.m. to noon. I'm Kudlow. Be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
We are talking politics with Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, and Joe's new book. You can get it for pre-order, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big Beautiful Campaign, Unburdened by What Has Been. Wow. Joe's first, earlier book, not first, Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. And Mark Simone, Hall of Fame radio host at 710 WOR, playing weekdays, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Gentlemen, welcome back. Mark Simone, should we get rid of daylight savings time?
Absolutely. What's the point of having to get dark at 4:30 in the afternoon? It's typical Trump. If it's common sense, do it.
Who invented? Did you invent daylight? Who was the inventor of daylight savings time?
It was something to do with farmers years ago, something about the crops and having a daylight at the right time of day. But the farming industry is pretty tiny. We don't need to do it just for them.
Joe, get rid of it?
I think I saw a poll that 85% of Americans want to get rid of daylight savings time. For Mark's exact point, it gets dark because I have like some mountains, like not Mount Everest, but mountains kind of around where I live. So once that sun gets behind those mountains, it's like 3:45 and it's dark. You're like, all right, this is depressing. Like I just got the kids from school. They can't go outside at this point. I don't see any real reason behind keeping it, quite frankly. And I was just looking it up online here as far as when it was invented, and Mark is correct. Yeah, this was something to do with farmers and crops, but we're kind of past that point now. So, yeah, common sense says get rid of it. Trump and this Congress will.
Chuck Grassley might have started it. He's 90 years old. He might have been the guy.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Out in Iowa. Joni Ernst, but she's too young to have started it. Yeah, it is depressing. I think that's the worst part. It's psychologically depressing to see all that darkness. I mean, it's like dark for days and weeks and months in Alaska, but we don't have to have it here, especially with the drones in the skies. It's not good. Too much.
Yeah, and Larry, by the way, it would save a lot of money on electricity because people are turning their lights on sooner, right? So there's an economic angle to this as well.
Mark, well, I got you here. Are you bidding? I don't know where the auctions are. Are you bidding for any of the border wall steel and equipment that Joe Biden is tearing down? I mean, is this the most pathetic, lowest of the low, jealous, dumb thing in the world? On his way out, he's trying to auction off the wall, which Trump wants to build and rebuild.
I have a policy of not buying anything from Joe Biden, so no, I'm not bidding. But this goes back to what we were saying. In his final 30 days, he'll do the worst stuff imaginable. Petty, cheap, awful, lying, terrible stuff. He's a no-show. He doesn't even show up for work, but the only thing he shows up for is to do these terrible things.
I haven't actually seen him recently, publicly. Where is he?
No, there's nothing on the schedule. Harris, same thing. There's nothing on their schedule. Mainstream media keeping totally quiet about that.
Who's running the country?
Oh, Mark. Who's running the country, exactly. Now, to answer your question, Larry, he did do a speech on Wednesday, I believe, in D.C., and the teleprompter goes out. And I'll send the link to your producer so you can play the soundbite if you like. But it's he says, oh, wait, the electricity went out. And they mumbled some things for a while. But it's funny because he was on a microphone that was powered by electricity. He meant to say teleprompter, I guess. But again, I mean, this is the worst administration of all time, right? I mean, I was barely alive for Carter. I've read a lot about it. But Carter at least seemed like he tried and cared about the country and just was kind of incompetent. But Biden, it seems like he's trying to destroy it, like whether we're talking about the border, whether we're talking about inflation, whether we're talking about these wars that he really, really wants to continue by all the billions he's sending over to Ukraine and to Iran for that matter. It's evil. I mean, I'm sorry I don't use that word very often, but every intention, not so much he seems to have, whoever's running him seems to have, is bad. And I wonder if is George Soros running the country? Because that's the only explanation I have.
It's Mark Simone. Biden's economic farewell speech was not received that well. Actually, it was virtually not covered. I don't know if he could get through it without the teleprompter. But Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, gave her speech. And she apologized for a $36 trillion debt. She said, I wish we had done better. This is 4 years later. She's the one who said inflation is transitory. And then she finally admitted that it was around, then it was bad in their second year. I remember she went on CNN and said that I called it the hostage speech. And she apologized for $36 trillion debt. So I don't know who's running the country. I have no idea. I mean, it's a very interesting question.
I think that's one reason. Trump's favorability is at an all-time high right now. And you see a lot of Democrats. There's a big chunk of Democrats who were Bill Clinton, common sense Democrats, who feel free now to leave that world and show some support for Donald Trump because they've never seen anything like this. A guy who actually works 18 hours a day, gets things done, and he's brought back what Reagan brought, that old-fashioned American moxie, that can-do spirit that's been missing for years. He crushed the Clinton machine. He crushed the Bush machine. He just crushed the Obama machine. They know he's a winner, and they want to be with him.
Yeah, Joe, he's captured the zeitgeist. There's a new zeitgeist in the country, a new spirit in the country. And Trump in some ways created it, but it's spread, and he's capturing it now, and he's channeling it, and he's doing a wonderful job. Everything he does. We talked weeks and weeks ago about him going to the Al Smith dinner and Kamala not going. But when he went to the Notre Dame Cathedral for the reopening of that, and then he shows up at the New York Stock Exchange as the Time Man of the Year, I mean, these are just all brilliant moves by Donald Trump. He is the zeitgeist right now.
He is the president right now. He just looks so presidential, whether it was in Paris, whether it's at the New York Stock Exchange, as you mentioned. And in my book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, I went to his rally in Wildwood. The Trump people flew me down on the plane. We had Wendy's, which, was awesome. And then I remember, taking notes throughout the rally. He's going to say something different here I haven't heard before. And he made this one point, and it was off prompter. And he said, you know what? This movement is more popular and powerful than ever before because people have seen the alternative. He said in 2016 and 2020, I had to tell you what the alternative would be like. You'd have to imagine it. Now they've lived it, and that's why this movement, he never gives himself so much credit, but he calls it the movement. The movement has never been more popular. And you see it. Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy Jr. have been Democrats or have voted Democrat their entire life, and now they're on his team. It's incredible, the coalition that he has built.
I was just thinking, though, I hate to think thoughts about Joe Biden anymore, but he's given the most amount of pardons and commutations in the history of pardons and commutations. Yeah. And Mark Simone, have you gotten a pardon or a commutation for anything? Everyone. See, I didn't get one. I was kind of left out. Everyone's getting one. Drug dealers, murderers. It's the darndest thing I've ever seen.
Just wait. The worst pardons always happen in that final week. You do that at the very end. I think this is nothing compared to the pardons.
There's more coming.
Yeah. Whoever bought a Hunter painting, whoever donated money, there's a lot of pardons coming. They'd be uglier than these.
Yeah, and preemptive pardons. That's the worst one. You haven't committed a crime, and just in case you do, we got your back.
I just find this whole thing. The best part of this is the Trump zeitgeist. That's the absolute best part. America's coming back under Donald Trump. Joe Concha, thank you very much. Mark Simone, we appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Larry.
Folks, we're going to take a break. On the other side, Steve Forbes, the great Steve Forbes, going to talk to us.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
Welcome back, folks. We're going to talk some economics and some international stuff with the great Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. Steve's latest book is Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and How to Fix It. Thank you, Steve, for coming on weekend. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Always. I want to talk about some international stuff. There's a story in the paper. Trump weighs options, including airstrikes, to stop Iran's nuclear program. And now, of course, Israel has hit Iran. Israel almost, randomly at will can penetrate their air defenses. But Trump himself is thinking about that. And now that Israel's done so well, they've basically knocked out so much of Hezbollah on the north and Hamas on the south, it looks like a mop-up operation from here. Maybe there's a deal cooking, maybe not. But anyway, what do you think of that? Should Mr. Trump, take a kind of hyperactive approach to Iran?
Absolutely. Iran's whole nuclear program, which would be a devastation in terms of world stability, that should have been done 10 or 12 years ago. Should have been done by Bush, should have been done by Obama. And so now I think Donald Trump's got the perfect opportunity, and Israel's got the perfect opportunity to finish Iran's nuclear ambitions. And when you do that, combined with what has already happened, what looked like an ugly situation where Iran would be the dominant power, these terrorist extremists would be the dominant power in the Middle East, out to destroy Israel, out to get us, would be reduced to nothing. And that would be a profoundly positive thing. These people are they are terror central. And Donald Trump, when he was president, had them on their economic knees. Joe Biden revived them. And, Larry, one of the strangest things that happened under Barack Obama was his unstated policy of encouraging Iran to be the dominant power in the Middle East, over the Arabs, over the Israelis. And it was weird. I don't know what was behind it. But anyway, it would have been devastating for the free world. And now we have a chance to stop it and stop the bloodiness of a revolution that happened in 1979 and should have been nipped in the bud years ago.
I mean, when you look at it, what Israel has done to cripple Hezbollah, which is an Iranian terrorist state, and then Hamas, and now Assad is fled to Moscow, so Syria was a buffer zone between Iran and Israel, and the Iranians backed Assad all these years. Now he's gone. Even the Russians, I was just reading in the paper, Steve, Russians are pulling out their, I think, military equipment and their air base. They're going to vacate it. I mean, we could finish Iran off once and for all.
Their warm water port,
yes.
They are abandoning that, which Putin thought was a great achievement of his Mideast diplomacy. Now that, you might say, is sunk.
Sunk. Well done, sunk. But, I mean, we could finish Iran off once and for all.
And do it. This whole thing of trying to, which Biden did and Obama did, of trying to appease Iran, encourage Iran, give billions to Iran. And these people are true revolutionaries. And that's what our people just couldn't understand. They're out for blood. They're out for dominance. They're out for extermination of the Jewish people. And they just couldn't get their heads around it, so they kept appeasing it and hoping they'd turn into Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Wasn't going to happen. So let's get the job done, and this is the perfect time to do it.
I mean, after all, Iran is after us, the United States.
Yes, it is. And they wanted to develop missiles, and were developing missiles that could eventually reach the United States. And they're on the cusp of a nuclear device. So knock it out now. This is the prime time to do it.
The other thing is another international story that I wanted to cover. In the papers today and yesterday, Russia, using these new hypersonic missiles that they've developed, they're bombing Ukraine hard. Now, this comes after the Bidens green-lighted Ukraine to use cruise missiles and bomb into the interior of Russia. Now, this just strikes me as insanity. Re-escalation. Trump wants to end the thing altogether, and the Bidens are green-lighting it, and, of course, Putin is responding. I mean, people are calling it World War III. Whatever it is, it's not good. And this is the most irresponsible thing. I mean, among many irresponsible things Biden's doing in the last few days of his presidency, this is one of them.
Well, one of the things and I think Donald Trump recognized it, I hope he does, is that Putin is like the Iranians. He has ambitions in Europe. He has ambitions to destroy NATO and throw us out as the dominant power in with Europe. And so I think he's going to have to be more patient than he wants to in terms of getting a deal. He's got to make it clear to Putin that a deal must include guarantees for Ukraine's independence, not promises, like Munich in 1938 with the Czechoslovakians, but real. And that may mean having ultimately, this sounds strange today, but ultimately having the British, the French, and especially the Poles, because they're right at the border, having a strong military presence in Ukraine. So whoever succeeds Putin, forget about taking Ukraine. It has got, and it's better than a NATO guarantee, having bases there, not as a tripwire, but as a substantial deterrence. And that way you can get a peace. And as part of the deal, of course, you give a chunk of eastern Ukraine where you have Russian populations. Russia can keep those. They're going to keep Crimea for their Black Sea naval base. We'll let them keep that. But 85% of the country would be free of the Russians. Ukraine would be a true independent country. But I think President Trump's going to have to have Putin recognize he's not going to do a Munich-style deal and get over it. And you can keep your Russian pieces in the east, but you have to allow the people there the opportunity to leave that when you have the settlement. And that's that. And there'll be military bases there, substantial bases. So forget about reigniting the war in the future. And that way you can get a durable peace, not just with Putin, but whoever succeeds him.
Is it too soon to invite Putin and Zelensky to Washington, D.C. and try to hammer something out?
I think so, because Putin believes, strangely, that if he keeps hammering away, we in the West are going to behave like Biden and just get tired and say, do a Munich-style deal. So once what I think President Trump has to do is make it clear to Putin that as much as he may love him, but, whatever personal relationship they have, in terms of a diplomacy, Ukraine is going to be an independent country. Get over it.
Yeah.
And we're going to take the steps to make that independence. And once Putin realizes he's not going to roll Donald Trump at the negotiating table, then you bring them together. But you got to disabuse Putin, just as the Israelis disabuse the Iranians. They're not going to get their way. They're not going to wait us out.
I don't think he loves him. I mean, Trump.
Well, I'm just being facetious.
Yeah. Trump just tells people to respect him because he's a formidable enemy. There was a lot of, all that Russia stuff was.
Yeah, he's not Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
That's right.
He's a formidable, can be a formidable adversary. He's shown that time and time again. And I just am reminded of that wonderful story in Trump's first term when he had Xi Jinping over to Mar-a-Lago, and over when they're eating chocolate cake for dessert, Trump calmly tells them that he's bombing Syria.
I know, big time, right?
Well, so they know Donald Trump is no Joe Biden.
There'll be more chocolate cake coming. So it's Trump's favorite dessert, by the way. It's a chocolate brownie on top of some vanilla ice cream. I've had the experience. Steve Forbes, you're so great. Hey, Steve, stay with us. I got much more to do. I want to talk to you about tax cuts and the stock market and Trumponomics. Folks, we're talking to the great Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. Steve's latest book is called Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, How to Fix It. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
We are talking to the great Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, and Steve's latest book, Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and How to Fix It. Steve, I know we talked a bit about this on TV yesterday, but it's worth renewing. Again, decisions, I think, are going to be made possibly this weekend by President Trump with House and Senate Republican leaders, but delaying the tax cuts, which you and I oppose. The stock market, I notice, has fallen 7 straight sessions. Dow's lost about 1,200 points. Prior to that, in the euphoria of November 5th landslide, stocks have gone up nearly 3,000 points. I think a lot of it has to do with potential delaying the tax cuts may never happen. And in fact, the tax bill may never get extended if they wait on it. And people are scratching their head and thinking, why are these politicians doing this?
Yeah, it's amazing that they can't seem to walk and chew gum at the same time, as the saying used to go. You can do all of the above. The border thing you can take care of, starting as Trump's already doing it with the threat of tariffs, but also undoing, as you know, Joe Biden undid all the executive orders that Trump had put in place to stop the flow of illegal immigrants. And Joe Biden undid them. So now we have to undo, and Trump can do it with a stroke of a pen, undo the undoing of of Trump's original executive orders. I think there are 94 of them Biden got rid of. So he can take care of the border at the same time. But in the meantime, and we've discussed this, Jason Smith, the head of the Ways and Means Committee in the House, is ready to go on doing a big bill. It's the senators that seem to be weird about it. And they should not only renew the tax bill of 2017, but substantially expand it so you get a booming economy. We've talked about the need for a capital gains tax cut. The beauty part of that, not only does that encourage investment, but also it instantly brings in government revenues. People recognize past gains, and they'll recognize them because they don't get punished so much anymore. And in terms of, yes, we'll do tips, we'll do Social Security and those things that the president promised. But one way to deal with the personal income taxes is you can knock off a couple of points on those brackets, but also substantially expand the scope of those brackets. For example, you go to 22 to 12%, from 10 to 12% at the $23,000. Knock that up to $73,000. Add $50,000 to each of the brackets and cut off a couple of points. So immediately people would see, hey, this is working. The economy is all for incentives now instead of punishment. So go big. And as you know, CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, and the so-called deficit hawks will howl or scream or whatever. Let them. But put it through. President Trump will never have the kind of authority he has today. And so use it to get big things done. And when you get big things done, that'll help us not only the economy, but in 2026, where the Democrats are already plotting winning one or both of the houses and making sure the last 2 years of Trump's presidency are going to be a replay of the disaster get Trump syndrome that we've been experiencing.
Yeah, strike while the iron is hot. The guy's popularity is over 50%. His approval is over 50%, which is the first time he's had those kinds of numbers. You know, I was looking at a study on tax cuts and revenues and why the Congressional Budget Office and the Joint Tax Committee are so bad. Here's one of them. Actual revenue between 2018 and today, 24, actual revenue for income tax cuts exceeded the CBO projections by $1.7 trillion. $1.7 trillion individual income tax, and the corporate tax revenue exceeded the projections by $166 billion. So CBO isn't even close. And the interesting thing is not only the corporate tax, but the individual tax. So your point, I really like that. Expand the brackets, which would give people a lot more and newer relief to fatten their wallets.
To Jan 1, 2025.
Oh, yeah.
They'll pass it in the spring, make it retroactive so people see it in the next paycheck. By golly, this thing is working.
You'll get it. You're right. And that'll punch GDP up a lot.
Yes, it will.
And, you know, a lot of people, look, they've been overwhelmed by inflation. The Federal Reserve is never going to let prices come back down. I mean, that's a whole different story. But if you slash the tax burden, then your take-home pay is going to go up, even though you got punished by 20% from higher inflation. So that's one way to do it. Trump should really consider that. I like that, expanding the tax bracket. And capital gains, you're right.
He's the kind of individual who would go for that and not worry about so-called respectability with the kind of economists the Feds has and the CBO has that are always wrong. And fortunately, as we've discussed, Jason Smith gets it. He's a guy who likes to get things done and has demonstrated he can work with the Democrats. He can weave something together. So let's get on it, and the bigger the better.
In my interviews on the TV show, Jason Smith and Steve Scalise, the House Majority Leader, both want to have one reconciliation bill, not two or three, one. And I think Speaker Mike Johnson is in the same camp. Pretty sure he's in the same. The problem seems to be coming from the Senate, Senator John Thune, and also from inside the transition, which is disappointing. Yeah, I don't want to name any names, but it's very, very disappointing. Look, there's Trump at the stock exchange Thursday, right? Again, repeating a 15% corporate tax, which would be a terrific thing, down from 21, which wasn't bad in the first place, as he said. I mean, he's got to just deliver on that. I mean, I really think the stock market has sold off here the last week or 10 days, Steve, because all of a sudden the tax cut hopes are fading because all these political people are knocking them down.
Yeah, and one good thing about getting a big bill, positive bill done now is within a few years, Europe, which is in a mess, Japan's stuck in the water, is they eventually will imitate what we did, just as you remember in the 1980s when we had those big rate cuts. Within a few years, 50 countries around the world were cutting their income tax rates. And so success will be imitated, which will make our foreign policy a lot easier when the world starts to say, hey, we can really grow again instead of the rut they're in now.
It's true. It's true. All the so-called free countries have gone socialist, and if they're not in recession, it's just stagnation, which is very bad for international affairs. You're 100% right. Folks, Steve Forbes, chairman and editor, Forbes Media, his latest book, Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, How to Fix It. Steve, thank you ever so much for helping us this weekend. Quick break, and Ann Coulter on the other side.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
All right, we're going to talk some politics with an old friend we haven't talked to in a while, on this show anyway, Ann Coulter, author of 13 New York Times bestsellers, columnist, and AnnCoulter.substack.com. Ann Coulter, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Larry.
So let's have some fun and talk about the little odd politics. 26 FBI informants on January 6th at the Capitol rally. FBI's been hiding this, but the Inspector General from the Justice Department has just published this. Now, we don't know all there is to know about what they did or did not do. Some of them are outside, some of them are inside. But, as so many people speculated that the FBI was involved or engaged in those January 6th demonstrations. What do you make of this story?
I've always been suspicious of it. Let me start there. I mean, suspicious of the idea that this was an FBI operation. And, that's because my book, Demonic, about groupthink and mobs, when I wrote that, I could honestly say there had never been a right-wing mob. This is a thing of the left and the Democratic Party. We live in a constitutional democracy. You want to change something, what right-wingers do is argue and try to persuade people, and you vote, and so hope your representatives represent you. So I admit, when I first saw that crowd storming the Capitol, there's never been anything like that by right-wingers. So at first, I definitely thought it was Antifa, was not. And I would like to read the Inspector General's report. So having said that, I was already, I'll start with my suspicion to begin with. I don't think it's contradictory to that point that there were some FBI agents apparently involved undercover. And I remember this after 9/11, when George Bush administration was rounding up all kinds of local terrorist cells. There was the guy who ran the push cart down on Wall Street. There was the Brooklyn Bridge, the guy who planned, I think it was a taxi driver, planned to blow it up. Right. And most particularly the Lackawanna Six. Remember that name?
Yes.
And the big thing at that time, Keith Olbermann and the rest of the left was, because there were some FBI agents involved in the planning, therefore, no, this whole thing was fake, it was entrapment. Well, that doesn't prove entrapment. Entrapment is when you're getting someone to commit a crime they would not otherwise commit. But of course you're going to have FBI agents involved in things that might lead to some sort of criminal conspiracy. So I don't think the fact that 26 with that many people going in necessarily proves anything yet.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with that. I just find it odd that it took so long for this information to get out. Some of them were outside, some of them were inside the Capitol building. And some of them, these are informants, I might add. They weren't actually FBI employees, or at least that's what I'm reading. Like you, I have not read the report. Actually, our friend Byron York wrote a lengthy column that had a lot of pretty good info on this. But, I don't know what their role is. But some of them were outside, some of them were inside. None of them were locked up. And some of them were talking to their handlers, but we don't know exactly what they said. So it's all up in the air. The next point.
I also assume, just to throw this in, law enforcement, the ones we like, the ones who actually want to enforce the law against criminals and not, anti-abortion activists and parents going to school boards, they do tend to be Trump supporters. I wouldn't be shocked if there were a few FBI agents just there on their days off.
Right.
And I also think most of the ones, the ones who were violent with the cops, obviously that was very bad. It was thuggish. But most of them, it was like taking over the dean's office. They're just walking through. I mean, even the guy carrying the podium around, come on, it's funny.
It was, yes. So next, the follow-up question now is, should Donald Trump pardon at least the nonviolent protesters? I mean, they were around. They've been treated incredibly badly. They don't seem to have any rights whatsoever. Habeas corpus has been suspended. So would a pardon be appropriate for Trump?
I would say yes to the nonviolent ones.
Right.
I would also be curious to see, can't believe the New York Times, but according to New York Times reporting, it was only the ones who did something more than just attend and peacefully walk through that are sitting in prison now. Maybe that's wrong, but for the ones who were really violent, and also, they've served, 3 or 4 years already. You could commute some sentences, too. That might be enough, depending on how bad the fighting was.
I mean, look what Biden's done. He's issued, 500 pardons and commutations, the largest in the history of pardoning. I mean, he's done that.
1,500.
1,500. What did I say? Did I say 500?
Yesterday.
I meant 1,500. Yeah, sorry.
It's unbelievable. So, the moral of this is, listeners, never fall for moderate Democrat. No, Democrats, even Mr. Moderate Lunch Bucket Joe, they are always for criminals and against taxpayers and people who have jobs and lives and don't commit crimes.
So if he can pardon all those people, Trump should be able to pardon J6 people, the nonviolent ones again.
Yes.
That's where I'm going on this.
Having seen the fighting, there were a few of them. I don't think it was that many. I think it was like 24 of them who really were very, very bad. But there were a lot more than that. How many have gone to prison? I don't even know.
Oh, I'm going to say 1,000, but I don't know either. I mean, a lot. The answer is a lot. Certainly many hundreds. Yeah. So, and
especially after a year of BLM riots with nothing being done.
Right.
I also no, statute of limitations never runs on murder. I would most important to me, bring a murder prosecution against the officer who blew away Ashley Babbitt for trespassing. I mean, that is the most astonishing. I have no idea why right-wingers haven't jumped on that more. Can you imagine if during the BLM riots a cop just blew away somebody crawling through a window, killing them for trespassing? Oh, my gosh, that was an unjustified shooting. It was on the Capitol grounds. That's a federal crime. I don't care if Ashley Babbitt was crazy. So were a lot of, Antifa and BLM rioters. You're not allowed to just blow away somebody who's trespassing.
I think this guy, we're talking about capital punishment. I think this guy, Mangione, who shot the United Health executive, I think people should be talking about capital punishment for him. I'm not usually for I'm for life imprisonment for these, but this is so horrific and sets such a bad thing. I mean, if we had a real governor in New York, which we don't, but putting that aside, I really think he should get the death penalty.
Yes, I agree. And by the way, I am enthusiastic about the death penalty. I think it should be given out a lot more than it is. Of course, it has no deterrent effect when liberals hold it up. And Americans keep voting. I also talked about this on my Substack podcast yesterday. Americans keep voting for it, keep voting for it, keep voting for it. Just a few years before Gavin Newsom was elected governor, they had an initiative in, the People's Republic of California. Should we get rid of the death penalty? No, Californians love the death penalty. And then the governor Newsom comes in and says, I'm going to suspend the death penalty. These people who talk about democracy, we love democracy. No, they'll just ignore the people's will. And in the case you particularly asked me about, especially because, this is just shocking that people are treating him like a hero.
Right.
I know my column this week was on, this is the fault of Obamacare. You can't blame insurance companies. I went to United's website just to see. Obamacare requires all these ridiculous procedures be covered that you have to pay for. There was a full page on United Healthcare's website of the transgender operations that are covered. So sorry, can't pay for your cancer.
Right. He just shot him in cold blood. Come on, doesn't that that's a problem. We really should not let that happen. And I don't know what's going to happen to this guy. As I say, if we had a real governor in New York, there'd probably be no question, but we don't have a real governor. But it's a bad story. And I was just reading the New York Post this morning. Your friend AOC, she was out there kind of cozying up to Mangione. I don't mean your friend. I'm being sarcastic.
I know.
I'm being sarcastic. But she is. She's kind of in the same category as that crazy woman from the Washington Post.
Yes, well, okay, I'm sorry, but this is the Democratic Party's fault. Health insurance wasn't fantastic before Obamacare. There was already too much lobbying by special interests, and you have to cover this and you have to cover that. And, for people who just want coverage for, what a normal person would want coverage for, that those plans are illegal. And it became a million times worse under Obamacare. You'll notice this, Larry. Whenever Democrats, quote, fix something, what they have done is create an endless problem to run on. Right. Whereas when Republicans fix something, like Reagan winning the Cold War, Reagan cutting taxes, no, we fix it. Crime, Giuliani and the Bush and Reagan judges. We fix them and it's done. Whereas Obamacare, now the biggest problem in the country is health care.
Yes, and we'll shoot the people we don't like. It's not good. Ann Coulter, fabulous stuff. AnnCoulter.substack.com. Ann, it's good to hear your voice. Honestly, hope you come back on.
Me too. Good to talk to you, Larry.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, folks, quick break. On the other side, the great Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, and we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about tax cuts. We're going to talk about Trump nominations, and I suppose we'll have to talk about drones also. I'm Kudlow. Be right back.
Larry Kudlow. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
The great Congresswoman from upstate New York, Claudia Tenney, Ways and Means Committee Oversight. Claudia, I got a couple of things. Thanks for coming on, by the way. We appreciate it, as always. I think they may make a tax cut decision this weekend. I don't know that they will, but the president's getting together with Thune. I think they're going to the football game, Army-Navy football game. And I interviewed your chairman, Jason Smith, who, like myself, would like to see tax cuts put in the very first reconciliation bill. Let's get started. Let's strike while the iron is hot. I don't know that I've actually asked you about this.
Hey, Larry, great to be on. This is a really important question. I think I'm going to look at the experience we had in the first round of the Trump tax cuts when I was in office in 2017 in my first term. And remember, we decided to do repeal and replace Obamacare first. Didn't get it through. We had to use the reconciliation process because we didn't have a 60-vote margin. And John McCain voted it down. It would have been mandatory spending cuts. We would be seeing lesser costs today. It would have been a good thing for us. Unfortunately, we are here again now looking at the tax cuts expiring, key provisions that are helping upstate New York, helping small businesses across the country, really bringing jobs back to America. Just so many good things about these tax cuts that will be catastrophic if we don't renew them. My biggest worry, and I agree with Chairman Jason Smith on this, is that how many bites at the apple are we going to get with a 1 to 2 seat majority in the House, a slim majority in the Senate? I worry if we linger, and I understand, I think this is the issue, Larry. They want to focus on the border and getting energy unleashed now. And they want to do that so that we can get to the tax cuts. But I feel like I agree with you and Jason Smith. I think we have to do it all in one. Nobody knows what could happen in the next few months with the House being such a narrow margin. Someone could retire, someone could leave, all these things could happen. And then we don't have an opportunity to revisit the tax cuts, which are vitally important. I like the idea of doing all of it at once.
Yes.
Because you often don't get a second bite at the apple. We went through this with border security when I was in my first term. We had one bill that the conservatives liked, and then the moderates didn't like. Then we had a bill the moderates liked, the conservatives didn't like. So we got nothing. Mm-hmm. And I worry that I think you can do it all in one big reconciliation. That day, you have instantaneous tax cuts, so they take effect at the end of 2025 when these are expiring. Mm-hmm. You unleash American energy, and you deal with the border on day one. And I think that is actually a smarter move because it's so unpredictable dealing with these narrow majorities in Congress. We know President Trump needs to drive this agenda. I think that's why Speaker Mike Johnson, I think that's why Thune, I think why everyone's going to be talking to Trump right now before the Army-Navy game starts at 3 o'clock. It's going to be key talk with him now to make sure that we get this thing done.
Well, they're listening to this broadcast, so everything you say is going to be very important. They're going to dial.
I hope so.
They're going to dial.
Everybody listens. This is like the old E.F. Hutton, Larry.
But you're right. You don't know how many bites out of the apple. You got to strike while the iron is hot, by which I mean right now Mr. Trump is, incredibly popular. Incredibly popular. He's throwing numbers he's never had in his political career. I mean, I'm calling it, it's like Trump takes over a new zeitgeist in the country. Why wait? Use that popularity for the next few months and get a terrific bill which redeems so many of the promises that he made during the campaign. I mean, just, Thursday, he was at the stock exchange talking about a 15% corporate tax rate for domestic production, that kind of thing. Steve Forbes wants to expand brackets. Well, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. I'm going to sneeze.
You.
I should have hit the cough button, but I couldn't find it. Oh, here it is. Anyway, for my next sneeze, I'll hit the cough button. But my point is, go now. You're very popular. The Republican Party under Mr. Trump's on a roll. And they're good promises, right? You can put it all into one bill. This is what Steve Scalise has been working on for a year, a gigantic reconciliation package. Why not?
I agree. I just worry we're not going to get it later and that we linger. And you saw, I think you pointed this out on your show yesterday, the stock market, when they got the news that the tax cuts were going to be later,
yes,
you see the stock market reacting to the tax cuts because they know, look, this is all the ingredients of what President Trump needs to do. He's looking at a 4-year term. He's got to have very quick growth. He's going to do that using energy. We're going to be building AI. We're going to be building electrification. That requires right away tax cuts because, they're going to be scored in a static way, not in a dynamic scoring way, which is going to, show the growth that's really going to happen from them. The largest revenues in American history coming into the IRS because of the tax cuts under President Trump, matched with the big spending of COVID and the Democrats and the programs they put in. If we have dynamic growth, especially in the energy sector where you're going to be able to get that growth, it's going to be unleashing natural gas, oil, using carbon capture, getting electrification, AI, all those things are going to give you massive growth. The tax cuts will come. And with that, you're also going to have the money that we're going to need to deal with this border issue, seal the border, deportation, finding these human trafficked children that Tom Homan talks about. All that's got to be done on day one. And then we can go into some other things that maybe aren't going to drive the economy. Driving the economy is what's going to be the signal, the start for the rest of it, I think. I agree with you, and I agree with Jason Smith on this.
The working class coalition. I call it the blue-collar boom. They're the ones that elected Trump. He's got to make good. And it wasn't the only thing, but the economy and the border were the two biggest things. So put them both in the bill, and you're right, add to that drill, baby, drill, and let's try to get better permitting regulations and cut some spending. But, strike while the iron is hot. And by the way, they'll feel it in time for the 2026 by-elections, right? That's a very important part.
And I think the thing is, one of the things that they're a little worried, there's two things that to be cautionary about. Number one is I worry about separating them in two bills, and I worry about any delay in the tax cuts because you have this whole, parliamentarian controlling what you can actually put in a bill for reconciliation. Wouldn't it be nice, though, if Democrats actually agreed with what the American people voted for and work with us? I don't know if that's possible.
You'll get a couple. You're going to get a couple.
That puts us in this situation. The other thing is, you've got that, how is the parliamentarian going to react to it? And you have this kind of quirky majority that we have right now in Congress. We have to stick together as the Republican conference. President Trump has got to lead the way with Mike Johnson. We've got to get the Senate to stick together and lead the way. We've got to all come together. One big group. We can't have the Senate versus the House versus the White House. It's got to be all of us at once doing the work.
Yeah, well, let us hope. Hope springs eternal on such things. But I tell you, it's a very important decision coming up. Claudia, we were able to get through this entire interview. I've only got 30 seconds left without mentioning drones. How good is that? I mean, really?
That's great.
How good is that? Because I'm so sick of the drone story, and I don't know what the hell is going to happen. You were great on the TV yesterday. And that guy, Brett Velikovich, he's a smart guy. All his is, we don't know what we're doing. I know you got some money in it for the NDAA, but we don't. This country does not want. Biden is nowhere to be found. Anyway, Claudia Tenney, great Congresswoman from upstate New York. We appreciate so much on the weekend for helping us out. Folks, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to do some stock market work. Jim Urio, Ken Polcari. I'm Kudlow. We'll be back after a bit.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
Welcome back, everybody. Larry Kudlow Show. You can get us on the internet. Live stream us on the internet. LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You can hear us everywhere, across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. And please, during the week, I invite you to join us on Fabulous Fox Business Network. Name of the show is Kudlow, 4 to 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. If you can't make it at 4, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing. So we're going to talk stocks. We've got two of the best, Jim Urio, TJM Institutional Services, Kenny Polcari, Case Capital Advisors, and Slate Stone Wealth. Gentlemen, stocks are all of a sudden slumping. And I have a theory. My theory is because some dummies in the Senate and even in the Transition Committee are talking about delaying the tax cuts. And that was one of the reasons for the big rally following the euphoria of Mr. Trump's big election victory. Tax cuts and deregulation, and that could be delayed. And stocks are listening to this and don't like it one bit. That's my take. Ken Polcari, what's yours? All right. Ken just dropped out, so we'll go to Urio. Urio, what do you think of this theory?
That's my favorite thing.
when the other guest is gone, so then I can just hear myself talk the whole time. So this is like an early Christmas present for me, Larry. No Kenny to bug me.
He's coming back.
Oh, sure he is. Okay, good. Okay, so I think you are definitely half right about this. I think that any talk of, but you said the key word in the whole thing, transition. This is a monstrous transition from whatever we had, you ever want to call it, the last 4 years, a regulatory mess and a nightmare and a labor market that was trash and was presented to us like it was good, despite the fact that all you had to do was look under the hood. Now we're going into obviously greener pastures. And last time I was on your show, you yelled at me for saying that it wasn't going to be that easy. You want to just blow the horn and say the cavalry's coming. I don't think it's quite that simple because of things like this. And now you look at like all the regulatory reform, the tax reform, everything it's going to address. We are going to run bigger deficits in 2025 than we did in 2024. I personally don't think it's a big deal, and I think global demand for our bonds will be fine if they think we're on the right path. But in the transition of trying to go from bad to good, it scares the stock market a little bit, and that's why it's sideways. That being said, I'm still fine with the stock market. What are we talking about? We're talking about a couple of weeks of a sideways trade. I still think we're above all the moving averages that I watch. A trade above, I'd say 6,100 in the S&P. I think we're off to the races again. I'm still a bull.
If you adjust for inflation, the S&P 500 gained 15% under President Biden. Mm-hmm. Under Trump's first term, it was up 51%. Mm-hmm. And
this is an important thing you just mentioned, by the way, too, because this has been my stump speech the last couple of appearances I've made. Like everyone wants to say there's bubbles and things. No, a huge part of the stock market rally over the last couple of years is just the fact that the dollar you're buying those stocks with is worth about 65 or 70% of what it was 4 years ago. Yeah. So it's not a bubble in the sense that everybody's buying it and leveraged up to the eyeball.
It wasn't real. It was inflationary. But the point is, to your deficits, look, deficits over time will come down if, A, the economy grows faster, because, B, tax cuts eventually increase revenues and reduce the deficit. There's a supply side effect here. Plus, look, the Doge brothers, as I call them, they're not as good at dancers as the Blues Brothers, but the Doge brothers, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they're going to chop down the regulatory state, and they're going to cut spending. So that's good. I just don't want any of it to be delayed, Ken Polcari. And I think the tax cut, look, Trump was at the stock exchange Thursday. And one of the things he repeatedly mentioned tax cuts and talked about the 15% corporate tax cuts for domestic production. And, there's small business tax cuts. And this is 2.0. Besides tax-free cash tips and tax-free overtime, you might see some bracket widening for individuals. That would be a lovely tax cut. You might see a lower capital gains tax that would generate more revenues. That would be a lovely tax cut. Stocks want that, but if these dummies in the Senate don't want it, then I think the stock market is it's going to give back a lot of the gains.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's kind of the wild card, right? If they don't want it, or if they drag it out, or if they give them a hard time, or if they don't, do all the things that the market is expecting to happen, right? I'm in Jimmy's. Listen, I'm bullish. I agree with Jimmy. I do think we're a little bit stretched right now. I think, we never had that pullback in the fall. I think we're going to get it in January and February. I think we're going to get a pullback in the market once the new year starts, because I don't think they're going to do it now with a week and a half left, and I think Jay Powell's going to cut rates next week just because he's painted himself in a corner. I absolutely don't think we need to, nor do I think he should, but I think he's going to do it because he doesn't want to create chaos in the last week and a half, because that's what will happen. The algos will start stamping their feet, and the traders will go, we didn't get what we want, and they'll hit the sell button, which for a long-term investor, by the way, wouldn't be so bad, because I'd love to buy stocks cheaper.
Why is he cutting rates? Again, I don't understand. Inflation in the last 6 months has gone up, not down.
No idea why he's cutting inflation, which is why I'm in that camp that he doesn't need to do it. Look, they've already done it. We've cut 75 basis points. We're going into a new year, a new administration, a whole new economy, and he wants to cut rates in the face of rising PPI for 2 months now, and now a rising CPI, which, may have been a tenth of a point, but the fact is it's not going down anymore. It's starting to turn up. And with the hot PPI number again this month, you can expect CPI is going to be hot again next month. So why is he cutting? No idea. Absolutely should not be cutting.
You guys remember Oliver Cromwell?
Sure.
He was very, very big in the late 18th century in England, and he addressed the Parliament and said, "In the name of God, go." That's my theory about Jay Powell. It's time for him to go.
Yeah.
In the name of God, go. Let Trump appoint his own guy.
Yeah, but he just made so many mistakes. But here's what I think, too. It's from the 8-year span from 2013 to 2020, we averaged 1.5% year-over-year CPI. He's made it very clear that he wants to get the average back, I think, above his target of 2%. So when the market saw that 2.7% print in CPI on Tuesday, I think they said, well, that's within his secret range, not his 2% pretend range. And they were like, okay, he's fine with that. And that's why the stock market rallied 50 points on the news.
Well, that's a great idea. Let's let prices keep rising, and let's keep screwing middle class blue collar workers.
Right.
You know, we've hit them for 4 years. Let's hit them again, right? I mean, prices up 20%, electricity up about 40%. Yeah, let's go get them. Let's get them again.
So but there may not be any other way out of this than to inflate our way out of it. Have we thought about that? To Jimmy's point, no. I don't think 2%. I agree with Jimmy. 2% is the pretend number. I think it's really 3% is what they're satisfied with, and that's right about where we are. And although I think
it's not 3, it's 23. It's 23.
Yeah, right.
You have to put in the 20 that we just had. Okay, I mean seriously, you know, well-to-do people don't worry so much about inflation. Working folks, working class people do. You earn $50 to $100,000 a year, you've been slaughtered. And by the way, that's why they all voted for Trump. So what Trump's got to do is get inflation down, which he could do through the energy channel. That would help.
Right.
Get those taxes down so they can take home more. And I'd like to see him install his own Fed chairman. He can't. He's not going to fire Powell. I'm just saying like Oliver Cromwell. In the name of God, go. By the way, I didn't know Cromwell. I was a few years later than he was.
Right, because you could get Jay Powell could decide to retire. He could do that.
Yeah, now you're cooking. You're cooking. Services inflation last 12 months, 4.5%. Services ex energy last 12 months, 4.6%. Yeah. Core CPI, 3.3%. Last 3 months, core CPI, 3.7%. You think that's lower inflation? I don't understand that.
No.
Help me out here.
No, and you know what? And remember, we're a 75% services economy, so that services inflation number is key for people to understand.
Boring. I'm about to irritate both you guys with my next take. Are you two ready? Here we go. I genuinely believe that Donald Trump's policies are it's the only path. Kenny said there's no way out of it. I think there is mostly no way out of it, but the one way out of it is through the supply side solutions you said, through about energy, and then just extend that to every other sector too. When you make it easier for companies to supply things, the inflation will go down. That's in the medium term. In the short term, Donald Trump's policies could be a little bit inflationary if he sets taxes real high, which, by the way, I still think is the right thing to do. But it could be inflationary, and the stock market could be worried about that a little bit too. How am I so wrong, Larry, that you're going to be mad at me now?
I mean, it's just you know, if you produce more goods,
that takes time, though.
It doesn't take that much time. It might take 20 minutes or it might take 40 minutes. I don't know how much time.
We got 40 minutes.
I heard the whole story. You know, I heard this in the Reagan year. All of Wall Street is – I'm surprised you're not quaking in your boots about tariffs. Tell me why tariffs are going to be inflationary, Jim Uriel.
Well, first of all, I don't think tariffs in the past haven't been that inflationary.
Right.
The countries that supply the goods will end up taking most of that hit. Donald Trump was right to a certain extent about other countries paying him. Do you agree with that, right?
Yeah, that was my argument when I was at the NEC. That's exactly right.
Good. And secondly, I don't even think Donald Trump loves tariffs as much as he says he does. I think he believes they're a cudgel or it's a club to bring them to the table. And China already came back out and said, we'd love to be able to work this out. That's what Donald Trump wants. You know that better than anybody. Right. It's a negotiating tactic. He is not a fan of tariffs. And by the way, I'd like to say to everybody who's learned in Econ 101, same as me, that tariffs are bad. Yes, but tariffs that are put on to try to eliminate all tariffs that are being charged on you, that's a different story.
Right. That's exactly right. He wants to use it to negotiate reciprocity, get all these darn tariffs down. I think that's all baked in the cake. I'm just worried. I don't want to delay the tax cuts, and I think neither does the stock market. Loves growth. Look, profits are the mother's milk of stocks. What Trump is saying is he's going to lower taxes on profits, which means you'll get more profits. Okay, and you'll get higher real wages. This is good for stocks.
Why do you think the Senate, or at this point the House, they're both the Republicans have complete control? Yeah. So why are we concerned that they're not gonna let it happen, or they're going to give them a hard time? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with what. No,
I'll just tell you the politics so far. This could and hopefully will change. But Senator John Thune, who's the new Senate Republican majority leader, is talking about having 2 reconciliation bills, maybe 3. And then I just think you don't have enough. They're not. Claudia Tenney was just on. You don't know you're going to get more than one bite out of the apple because the Senate's in good shape for the GOP, 53 votes, but the House is only 1 or 2 vote margin. Very difficult. Right. So do it all at once. Do it all. Big bang. Go big bang. Do it all at once. Get the money to close the border. These guys, I love Biden's. Besides the fact that he can't figure out where the drones are coming from, they're selling off Trump's wall. They're selling off all the loose pieces from Trump's wall. That is the meanest, pettiest thing I've ever seen. Yeah.
And they're spending money like drunken sailors on their way out too. The whole thing it's mind-boggling.
I got to take a break. Enough of this speculation. Anyway, Jim Uriot, TJM Institutional Services, and Kenny Polcari, Case Capital Advisors, and Slade Stone Wealth. Stay around, fellas. We've got one more bite at the apple. I'm Kudlow. Be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
We're talking stocks and bonds with Jim Uriot, TJM Institutional Services, Ken Polcari, Case Capital Advisors, and Slate Stone Wealth. Uriot, what's going to happen to the bond market?
So I think that for the next year, I think that 10-year yields are going to go higher based on the deficits, based on issuance, based on the fact that we've already established that the Fed wants 2.6, 2.7% year-over-year inflation and not 2%. So this next year, I'm not buying anything longer than 2 years in the bond market. I think the curve steepens out back to its historical average of about 100. But by the way, I actually think if the other side had won the election and was still going to continue just the spending with this high regulatory environment, I think buyers in the bonds would have backed off a lot more than they're going to here. So I think it's a better situation. But I think 10-year yields could go to 4.75% to 5%. I think if they went much over 5%, I think the Fed comes back in, which I think would be an awful mistake. Hopefully the next Fed chairman will have more sense than to do that.
Ken Polcari, what's your outlook for stocks? What's the best place to invest right now, you think?
So my outlook is I think we're going to have some weakness in the first, January, February of the new year, and which wouldn't be bad. I'd like to see the market actually back off. Even if it went down to the short-term trend line, that's a 3% pullback, which isn't really even a pullback. I'd like to see it, go 5 to 8% would be nice. 10% might be okay. But that being said, then I think the market settles down. Now it starts to focus on the new administration and what's happening. And look, I'm looking at like as a wealth manager and broadly diversifying, remaining that way, but putting more money on a pullback back into quantum stuff, which is kind of one of the new areas of AI that's suddenly getting all kinds of chatter. IONQ, QUTM, or a couple of QUTM is an ETF. Sylvia Jablonski's, but there's a couple of names out there that are very, very interesting, as well as just regular AI and tech, right? I'd love to buy more NVIDIA, but I'm waiting for the pullback, right? I'd love to buy other.
What's quantum stuff? You mean quantum computing stuff?
quantum computing that's going to start to change the face of even the way AI is going to be is going to interact and create. It's been really suddenly it's been very, very. They've been talking about it a lot, and some of these companies are talking about the role that they're going to play now in the future of AI. So it's very, very exciting and very volatile. So understand that, very volatile.
What's
so
a good?
Slowly, if you do.
I know you gave us the letters, but what's a couple of companies for quantum computing?
IONQ is one. It's like a $33 stock, but that's I bought it at 37, trades down to 26, back up to 33. It's very volatile, so you have to know that going in. But then Defiance ETFs has one. It's Sylvia Jablonski, and I think it's QTUM is an ETF that has, and I think it's up 50% or something this year. But within it, look at the names within it. Again, they're all mid-cap, small-cap, and mid-cap names, so they're very volatile. But some of them are up 300-400% on the year. So it's been very, very interesting. But I think it's going to be a very interesting place in the new year as we talk about, how AI continues to develop and change the world.
Thank you, fellas. We appreciate it. Jim Uriel, Ken Polcari. Thank you very much. Money and Politics on the other side of the break with Liz Peek and Steve Moore. I'm still Kudlow.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Larry Kudlow.
Hi, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow, and this is Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. And today we're talking about protecting your future by keeping a sharp eye, as usual, on money and politics. Things look pretty good, maybe some glitches. Let's talk about it with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, syndicated columnist, Steve Moore, WABC radio host of More Money, which comes right after this show on many of these same stations, and Steve's new book, The Trump Economic Miracle and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again. All right, welcome back, kids. Liz Peek, Donald Trump, Time Man of the Year. It had to be Trump. I liked your column a lot. I saw it in The Hill. And here's what I really liked about it. If you look around the world, besides Macron has an approval rating of 23% in France. Justin Trudeau has an approval rating of... Yeah, we're here.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Justin Trudeau has an approval rating of 22%. And in Germany, Olaf Scholz has an approval rating of 18%. Trump's approval rating right now is over 50%. By the way, Canada may be the 51st state. But, really, maybe they should learn something from Mr. Trump about taxes and regulations and climate change and open borders and how he won this race, because they are flunking left and right, aren't they?
Yeah, honestly, I think if you take a step back and U.S. legislators, U.S. policymakers should really take a hard look at what's going on in Europe, because that is a place where a lot of the things they have been pushing for the last 10 years in the U.S. have been well underway for 5 to 10 years longer. So you can look at Germany, where their auto companies are in free fall. They are panicked over the surging imports of EVs from China. These are the world's best automakers, arguably, are in Germany. It is an enormous part of their economy. Volkswagen has announced closing 3 of their plants for the first time in 89 years. And all of these companies are really under stress because of EV mandates and the fact that no one bothered to look around and realize that China was probably, in terms of rare earths and other kinds of materials, the best positioned to make EVs. Larry, I have said before that our Detroit automakers are going to be wards of the state unless something really radically changes in the way we're pushing them to EVs. They're losing tons of money. But it isn't just climate policies like that. As you say, this unfettered immigration in Germany, France, all these countries are responding again to policies that have really hurt workers, really hurt their economies, and that we are eagerly pursuing particularly in states like California, here in the United States. I wish sometimes someone would read a newspaper and kind of see what's going on over there.
Well, a lot of those leaders probably can't read. I mean, that maybe is one of the reasons why they're in such bad shape. I mean, but Steve Moore, Trump's going to end the EV mandate. He's going to slap some big tariffs on China, allow us to catch up, I think, or maybe they'll cut their own tariffs. I don't know. I'm never very hopeful about that. Unlike Europe, Trump wants to lower taxes. Europe always wants to raise taxes. And unlike Europe, Trump wants to close the border. And these countries that Liz mentioned, I mean, it's important. Their populations are furious at open borders and what immigration has done to them. So they should take a leaf from Trump's winning combination. I mean, he just had a landslide.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Liz was saying, all of those countries, Germany, France, Britain, Spain, I believe that you're going to have a Trump revolution in every single one of these countries. I really do. I think within 2 or 3 years. I mean, Trump is not just the man of the year in the United States. He's the man of the year globally. And people, he has unleashed a global revolt against arrogant, out-of-touch politicians. And so, this is a big deal. And Trump is popular in all these countries. And what's happening in all these countries is people saying, why can't we have this kind of revolution here? The two most popular politicians in the world today are Donald Trump and Javier Milei in Argentina. And so I'm really hopeful that we see these kinds of pro-free market, pro-people, populist revolts happening all over the world. And Trump saw this wave before anybody else did. By the way, Liz is right. He is more popular today than he has ever been. I love what he's doing. I loved what happened on the New York Stock Exchange floor. I love when he put on the McDonald's. I mean, the guy can't get it wrong. I mean, everything he does is so amazing. And I also want to, tip my hat to the campaign people and the people around him. They're giving him great advice. But this is the good Trump. This is the really good Trump we're seeing.
Well, he's learned a lot. I think he's learned a lot. And, when you read that Time magazine interview, it sort of goes on endlessly, which is too bad. But you get toward the end of it, one of the things, he's humbled by the fact that he literally dodged the bullet. I mean, literally dodged the bullet. And he says in there, it has made him more religious. It has made his family members more religious. It's made the country more religious. And he said, God kept me alive for a purpose. And I think, we first heard that at the Milwaukee convention. He's never lost that. Here it resurfaces again in that interview with Time magazine. And the left will never understand this. And they project a Donald Trump, who's going to be seek retribution and throw people in jail, and they're having pardons before any crimes are committed. They're just missing the point completely. Kellyanne Conway calls it stage 5 Trump derangement syndrome. They're still – that's a great line. I mean, that's really what's happened. They don't understand not only the change in him, but the policies that made it possible. That's what's happening here.
And the change in the country, Larry.
Yes.
I mean, their own businesses, the legacy media is in free fall. And you would think at some point someone's going to say, hey, I don't want CBS to go out of business, so maybe we have to stop lying about all the stuff that Trump is doing. Maybe we have to play it fair and right down the middle, which, by the way, historically was the expectation. And boy, have we gotten far away from that. I think voters really don't like that. I think that, this piling on of Trump in particular over the last 8 years has really soured the public on the traditional media. And that's a shame. I mean, these businesses have been around a long time. They could be a force for good, and they really have not.
Right, they're being replaced by conservative media outlets. Whether it's podcasts or Twitter X, they're just being replaced, and they know it. They know it. I mean, and Trump was very brave doing all the podcasts that he did. Obviously, Joe Rogan, but that wasn't the only one he did. And so he's shaming it. And you know what else, Steve Moore? All these CEOs, I love this, Zuckerbucks and Bezos, they're all running down there. These are guys who wouldn't give Trump the time of day Now it's like a pilgrimage, okay? A pilgrimage. I don't know if they're going to change or not, but they're going down there, kiss the ring.
Yeah, they're even giving him $1 million each for the inauguration.
Yes.
So they're coming with Zuckerbucks.
Zuckerbucks, I know.
But it is. I mean, here's the thing. 10 years ago, can you imagine any of these, the people at Google, the people at Amazon, or the people at Apple, or any of these big tech companies, praising Donald Trump? It was impossible. But you know what? They realize, and I've talked to some of these major, tech people. They realize Trump is the guy who. Look, we totally dominate the tech world. I mean, we are number one in. I think 6 of the 7 largest tech companies are here in America. We should be proud of that. And I think Trump is pro-tech. He wants America to lead the way. And I think, what Trump is saying to these people is stop discriminating against conservatives.
No censorship. No censorship.
That's right.
That's the key. No censorship.
And I think they're onto that, and they want to. I mean, they realize that, by the way, it was Lena Khan and people like that who were Biden people who wanted to, kill big tech and that kind of thing. So I think we've got a real opportunity here to really open up the eyes. We want fairness from big tech, not censorship.
Well, I hope.
But they also want to survive. And as you say,
exactly.
What has the Biden White House been doing? They've been trying to kill these companies, divide them up.
Exactly.
Take the ones that are the most successful companies in America and hobble them. Now, tell me why big tech would get back in the corner with Joe Biden or with any Democrat, because this is the kind of stuff you hear from Elizabeth Warren and other Democrat progressive leaders. They hate big tech. So I don't know why they teamed up with them in the first place. It was monumentally stupid.
Wasn't J.D. Vance a big fan of Lena Khan?
Yeah, I agree.
And we got to work on that one.
Yeah, got to work on that.
That is one of the tensions, I think, in this incoming administration. You've got hawks versus doves on foreign policy. You also have hawks versus doves on big tech. And I think J.D. Vance is kind of in the minority there.
And the reason I think this is wrong, by the way, is that, first of all, as I said, we dominate big tech, and the rest of the world is so envious of what we've done and with the incredible ingenuity of our American people. But if we try to break up big tech, you know who's going to benefit from that, Larry?
China.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
China. And we need tech to figure out where the drones are. That's what we need.
Oh, my gosh.
We need drone tech.
Gosh.
I got to take a break. We need drone tech. Liz Peek's going to come back with us. Steve Moore is going to come back with us. Steve's More Money is on after this show on many of these same radio stations. Liz is a Fox News contributor. We'll be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Talking money and politics with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Steve Moore, radio host, WABC radio host of More Money, coming up right after this show on many of these same radio stations. And Steve's book with Art Laffer, The Trump Economic Miracle and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again. Steve Moore, we should unleash prosperity in the first reconciliation bill. Delaying the tax cuts is a terrible idea. And then secondly, scoring them at $4.5 trillion by the CBO is utterly ridiculous and stupid.
Yeah, no question. By the way, I wanted to mention something also about Trump from our previous conversation. Do you know where he will be this afternoon, Larry?
Yes, I do know.
He will go to the Army-Navy game. I'm going to try to sneak out there. It's in Washington, D.C. this year. Usually that game is played in Philadelphia.
It's very cold.
But it is so cool that he's going to be there.
It's very cold.
He is such a great patriot. That's one of the things Americans love about Trump. Now, about getting the economy back on track. And by the way, the economy, is showing some tough signs. We've got a lot of work to do to rebuild this economy. This idea that Joe Biden, this week he said, I'm handing off Trump a really healthy economy. I'm not so sure about that. I think there's a lot of work to do. And the first thing we've got to do, as you and I have talked so much about, is we got to get this tax cut in place. because if we don't do anything, I want to make sure your listeners understand that we're talking about a massive tax increase on the American economy. And that's why the thing that you and I have been talking about, and I think Senator Crapo is aboard this, is the current services baseline for taxes should be the current policy.
Right.
That's
correct.
Policy. There's no
correct.
$4.5 trillion cost of extending these tax cuts. We don't do that with government spending programs. We don't just assume they're going to go away. And by the way, the idea that this is going to cost $4.5 trillion, which is being peddled by people like what's this group, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget.
Right.
It's just nonsense. We know from the first 6 years of the tax cut, Larry, that actually the revenues came in as, there was no revenue loss. None.
They made money. They made money. They made good money, actually.
Yeah.
When you take that, supply side effects, and then you add the Doge brothers, as I call them, they're going to find some spending cuts. It'll take a while for them to get off the ground, but it's a good package. I mean, point is, Liz, you don't know how many bites of the apple you're going to get. Trump is at the height of his popularity, right? Strike while the iron is hot. The longer you wait, the riskier it gets that one of his principal campaign pledges, which was boosting the economy through tax cuts, will never materialize. You shouldn't wait.
I agree. And by the way, Democrats would love to have these tax cuts expire because that would completely torch the economy. I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't think they are really invested in the success of Donald Trump, certainly, or the country. And the country would take a massive hit. And by the way, not just a hit to wealthy people or to corporations, people with low incomes who got big improvements in their child tax credit or bigger deductibles and so forth, or bigger deductions, those people would be hurt too. So I agree with you. Whatever it is that they want to put first, it's going to be large, ungainly, have all kinds of exploding problems in it that Democrats are going to hate. Why not make it twice as big and ungainly and full of other things they're going to hate and get the damn thing done? I really don't get – I honestly do not understand it unless it's a power play by John Thune and he kind of wants to exercise his muscle here and show that he can direct this stuff, which, by the way, I'm not at all sure he can. He's a new guy in town in this seat of Senate Majority Leader. Can he really wrestle these guys? I don't know.
The House side.
So why take a chance?
The House side, Steve, wants one bill right away with tax cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Smith wants it. Mike Johnson wants it. Steve Scalise wants it. So I don't know. Trump's going to make a decision. Some people saying he's going to make the decision today or over the weekend. I hope he makes the right decision.
Well, look, this is we're pursuing what Steve Forbes says is a very ultra risky strategy if we delay this tax cut. And look, Donald Trump has so much political capital right now. I mean, he's come in like Reagan did in 1984. I mean, he's got the American people behind him. They want this. He's got a voter mandate to make the tax cuts permanent. Do it in the first 100 days. I mean, why would you wait? Political capital can, it can go up and down, and people, the approval rating of presidents goes up and down. Why? There's no possible reason why. Do it in the first 100 days. And Trump has said he wants that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Liz, how's Scott Besson doing in your judgment?
Well, I think fine. I mean, so far there have not been any big trip ups, and Janet Yellen's out there yelling about how you better watch out. You're not going to be able to mess with bank regulation and stuff. Look, let's just get her out of this position. I think she was never a successful Treasury Secretary. She lied about various things. She lied about inflation, and then she lied about how, oh, yes, we're still holding the sanctions on Iran in place. We're still enforcing them. No, we weren't. I mean, otherwise, Iran's oil exports and income wouldn't have gone through the roof. I think we need someone in there who's kind of got a little bit of chops and guts to get this stuff in place, and I think he's going to do a good job. But going back to something Steve said, this whole tax cut issue is being messaged poorly. We're not talking about really much in the way of tax cuts as we are extending the current status quo, and to pretend otherwise. I never understood why the Republicans didn't make more during the campaign about the fact that letting them expire is the equivalent of a $5 trillion tax hike.
Right.
And if you do that, you're really putting the economy in jeopardy. So Yes, Trump wants a few extra things in this next round. Good for him, but for heaven's sakes, let's keep in place the changes that were made in 2017. That is absolutely essential.
By the way, Janet Yellen was on an apology tour. She just gave this talk where she apologized. I wish we had made more progress on the deficit and the debt, which went up about $20 trillion.
She was the main cheerleader for $5 trillion of spending. You're right.
Yeah.
By the way, I know we're running out of time, Larry, but
no, go ahead.
Yeah.
We got a minute.
I just wanted to mention that the other thing we have to do is repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Every single word of that.
Yes.
I mean, why would any Republicans want these boondoggle green energy programs?
Well, they're Republicans. They can't help themselves.
But they're shoveling the money out the door as fast as they can, Steve. I'm not. If all the money gets allocated, I'm not sure you can do much to it.
Listen,
it's green pork.
They're auctioning off the border wall.
Oh, no,
how sick is that? I mean, they're auctioning off the border wall. It's the most, and they're pardoning all 1,500 criminals. This is too. I mean, stop already, Biden. Stop.
Exactly.
It's enough already.
And who's doing it? That's really the question.
Right. Who is in charge? No one knows.
Yeah.
It's not Janet Yellen. Anyway, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. Oh no, we got a minute to go. Steve Moore, we have to write our piece on the tax cuts thing. I'm sorry.
Yes, we do.
It's the top of my pile. I promise you that. Promo your show, Steve. Give us it for instance.
We got a good show. We got David Asman coming on.
Yep.
We got your old colleague Trish Regan, and
Trishy.
We're going to be talking about what Doge should do to cut spending.
Doge brothers. They don't dance as well as the Blues Brothers, but they're very good. Thanks both of you, Liz Peek, Fox News.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Steve
everyone.
Moore. Coming up after this show on many of these same stations. I'm Kudlow. We'll close it down, but we'll see you next weekend, folks. Thanks for listening.